Hello, my name is Madison Webb, and today I'll be presenting on offensive versus defensive measures in the U.S. cybersecurity policy. The inclusion of the cyber domain to adversarial attack methods has shown potential for creating massive problems and even inflicting damage on U.S. critical infrastructure, as seen in Estonia in 2007 with the Stuxnet attack that disrupted government and commercial functions for weeks. According to Elias Saltzman in their article Cyber Posturing and the Offensive-Defense Balance 2013, cyber capabilities do not cause armed conflict but make decisions to escalate easier and cheaper. Therefore, not only do the attacks themselves pose a serious threat to U.S. interests, but they also serve as a threat to U.S. allied relations. As the U.S. struggles to keep up and defend against cyber attacks, it decreases the assurance of security to U.S. allies who depend on the U.S.'s military strength to deter against common adversaries. If adversaries feel unrestricted in their actions in cyberspace, it will increase the frequency and magnitude of cyber attacks against the U.S. and their allies. It would benefit the U.S. to not exclude the use of offensive measures from their policy and allow for an open-ended policy that prioritizes the bolstering of defensive measures, but also alerts adversaries to the possibility and probability of an offensive response. The offense-defense theory best describes the view that many academic sources are taking on the issues concerning offensive versus defensive measures in the cyber domain, as it describes that international relations works best when defensive measures are pursued over offensive measures. On the other hand, many academic sources take a realist approach and concede that while physically armed responses may not yet be needed for cyber attacks, other forms of offensive retaliation may become necessary in the near future. The primary position in this issue is to refrain from entering into offensive measures in the cyber domain despite the apparent correlation between high attack rates and lower cyber attack reception rates as depicted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Most research on this subject of U.S. cybersecurity offensive versus defensive measures are comparisons to previous policies. Though some sources emphasize the need for the U.S. to use offensive measures, most academic sources meet somewhere in the middle with recognition of the importance of defensive measures and acknowledgement that offensive measures might become a necessity in the near future. As the cyber domain is still relatively new, this threat is continuously evolving. The complications with establishing attribution capabilities and the failure to deter against them has proven a moderate issue for the U.S. There have been numerous attacks, but few have had the effect of truly disrupting the U.S. government or society. The more devastating attacks have been seen abroad, as mentioned earlier in the 2007 Stuxnet attack in Estonia caused the disruption to banking, media, and communications. The U.S.'s constant lag in defensive measures against smaller scale attacks suggests that this threat may become a far larger issue if the U.S. does not reconsider their attempts at deterrence as technology advances and cyber attacks increase. A more near-term threat is the loss of assurance. According to Will Goodman in his article Cyber Deterrence, Tougher in Theory Than in Practice, 2010, while reassurance cannot enforce deterrence, its absence certainly can detract from an otherwise effective deterrence posture. If the U.S. fails to assure its allies of their continued security presence, their allies will redirect their resources to develop their own defenses, which would dramatically decrease the U.S.'s global power, giving Russia and China the upper hand. If adversaries view the U.S. as weakened, even if it is merely perception, it may give them the confidence to escalate. The U.S. cyber policy states their willingness to use all instruments of power if need be. The U.S. has recently installed their new cybersecurity policy, which suggests an emphasis on the constant improvement of defensive measures like the previous two policies, but also suggests the use of offensive measures depending on the adversary and the situation. The policy focuses on increased cooperation with U.S. allies, promotion of U.S. interest, promotion of cybersecurity education in the U.S., and implementing deterrence factors in the cyber domain. The issue with the cyber domain is that almost every aspect is inherently complicated and is also inextricably linked to other domains. General Hyten stated that we have to figure out how to defeat our adversaries, not to defeat the domains where they operate. To maintain their position of power, the U.S. must continue to improve methods of attribution to effectively identify adversaries responsible for the attacks, retaliate accordingly, and then devise the best method of deterrence for that adversary, which will consist of both defensive and offensive measures. The U.S. must tread carefully in using offensive measures against adversaries in the cyber domain. It is critical that aggressive adversaries like Russia and China receive consequences for malicious activity against the U.S. and know in the future that those consequences will be swiftly delivered. However, it is vital that the U.S. be wary of each adversary's potential red lines and be cautious as to not overstep those lines and incite escalation. It is also critical that they work together with their allies to assure their security needs and concerns are met as well. The policy in place is new and only time will tell if it proves effective or not. But the areas that have been added in addition to ideas present in previous policies seem promising. The U.S. must prepare for the future by continuing to promote cybersecurity education, finding a balance between defensive and offensive measures, focus on each adversary independently, and increase communication and cooperation with partners and allies. Thank you very much.